The conditions are getting critical.
There is one image there that shows black people getting off.
So people with dark skin getting off.
Not dark, black.
Black skin.
Really black.
So people with dark skin getting off. Black skin.
Really black.
So people with dark skin getting off. Black skin.
Really black.
The conditions are getting critical.
Shalom and welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am your host, Yehuda Moshe, and this is a testimony in Jacob. Again, before we start, I would like to always give praise and glory to Yahweh and his son, Yahshua, the anointed Savior, for the revealing of righteousness, love, and truth in the final days. We will now resume with part 3 of the tribe of Judah scattered throughout Africa, with the emphasis on the western regions. If you have not checked out part 1 or part 2, please stop this video and do so. Okay, so we will begin with the Neo-Assyrian Empire, part 1. So here are a few images of the Battle of Ashurbanipal's Battle of Til-Tuba, circa 653. We're just comparing the images that they have in ancient times with what we can clearly see today. The source to my left here is from The Struggle of the Nations Egypt, Syria, and Assyria by Gaston Maspero, published in 1897. And on the bottom, we see that he wrote an ancient Susian of the Negritic race. So he knows that these are actual Negroes being depicted. The problem is that none of the reliefs that we have currently are still in color, but back when they were initially created, they were colored. Okay, so the gentleman to the right, the photo source is actually from Google Images, and I just put it up so that we can see the conformity in the facial structures and hair. These images, though they're on the reliefs, they don't get a lot of press, brothers and sisters. So I did my best to add contrast to the photos so we can kind of see these are clearly Negroes. Okay. Ancient Assyria in Blackface. The source is from the British Museum, and of course this is the work of Henry Layard. Layard refers to how at the time of discovery there were extensive traces of black pigment covering the face of the man with the monkeys, and he speculated that this was either from a deliberate attempt to depict a Negro or that the paint had washed down from the man's hair. No traces of this are now visible to the naked eye. Layard refers to the survival at the time of excavation of pigment on selected portions of other sculptures at Nimrud, specifically on the hair, beards, eyes, and sandals of some sculptures, and the red painted tongue of an eagle-headed genie. The white infilling in the inscription on this particular sculpture may also be ancient and resembles a feature noted on the Persepolitan inscriptions. Okay, so again, these used to actually be made in color, as we can see from the artistry of the ancient Egyptians. It was the same in Assyria, and for some unfortunate cause, we unfortunately cannot enjoy the artistry, the full artistry of the ancient Assyrians and what they used in their color palettes. But we can at least see among the tribute bearers that there was traces of black pigment on the faces of the man with the monkeys. Semitic Africans, Part 1. The source, The Natural History of the Varieties of Man by Robert Latham, published in 1850. Speaking of the Ghaz on the Cape Coast, Dr. Latham observes, quote, "More important still is the unequivocal occurrence of numerous well-marked Jewish characters in the religious and other ceremonies. A paper of Mr. Hansen on this subject leaves no doubt of the fact. The interpretation, however, is more uncertain. The present writer believes that such phenomenon, i.e. points of similarity with the Semitic nations is the rule rather than the exception with the African tribes, Negro and non-Negro, a fact which makes the Jews, Arabs, and Syrians African rather than the Africans Semitic." End quote. Now we know that the toponyms given in the author's example as the Syrians, the Arabians, the Africans, doesn't necessarily make one Semitic or a descendant of Shem. However, the author does show the conformity between African tribes and Semitic tribes as one and the same. So the bearded gentleman to my left, this is a photo of a God priest or Wor-lumor of the Gadame people of Osu. And I've color-coded the tribe of Gad and Dan within the spelling so we can see the etymology with who they are actually claiming to be of those tribes, Gad and Dan. Now, according to Adolphe Gounod's Igbo to French Dictionary Grammaire, published in 1899, the definition of Osu simply means tribe or people, but was later revised to mean an outcast. The reasoning behind this revision of the definition will be investigated at a later date. Okay, so Semitic Africans Part 2, and this is an interview of another priest of Osu, giving the account of the migration of the tribe of Gad and Dan into the interior of Nigeria. In the description of this video, I will provide all relevant links to this people along with the interview so that you can get a more in-depth explanation than what I'm giving currently. So in this portion of the interview, we read the following. The Osudoku people migrated from Israel and moved through many countries, including Sudan, before settling at Nigeria. We then continued with the larger Gadame group and settled at Wor-lumor, here in Ghana. There was confusion at Wor-lumor, which caused the larger Dame group to separate, and the Osudoku people moved to the Osu Mountains. So as a testament to this interview, I explain in video 1 in this series around the 22-minute 45-second mark the history of the Israelites being dislodged or removed from their high and inaccessible mountains, only to come down to be subjugated by the local princes and laid under tribute. So please check that out if you haven't already. We will now hear from the high priest or Wor-lumor of the Nadu clan of Osu, giving more history on the Semitic migration into West Africa. Please stay tuned.
I am Wor-lumor Boni Numbo Noi Sikan KPenuku II, Osu, Nadu, and Clote Wor-lumor, the overlord of all of Osu. The king of Benin in those days was very wicked, and he wasn't treating the Gans, or what we call the Dangbes, very well. We were by then known as Lapless. We were the Lapless. So he was not treating us very well. And at times they used to catch some of our people for sacrifices because they were taking us to be strangers in the land. So we decided to leave. And even that, they weren't ready to allow us to leave. That was why we chose that method of living by tradition. We were drumming, beating gongons, so they thought we were there. Oh. So we were going slowly, slowly. So bit by bit and group by group, we were living till they saw that we've all gone.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting bit. But if you say you were strangers in Benin, where exactly did the Gans come from? Because from research, some people say the Gans are from Israel, some people say Niger,
exactly so.
Yeah.
We are a tribe, the Levitical tribe of the Dan, of the tribe of Dan in Israel. And that was in 72 AD. 72 AD, when the Persians invaded Israel, Jerusalem, and they had wanted to take the Ark of Covenant. So we were the people who carried the Ark of Covenant to Ethiopia.
Okay.
So we left from Ethiopia because the Somalians were also disturbing us. They were Berbers, they were also disturbing us. So we were not a warlike people, we are just a priestly group. So we left there also and came to Sudan, the Kowa Valley. And from the Kowa Valley, we entered Nigeria. We entered Nigeria. The Apamus were on the Nyanao Hill, and they were warlike people, and they traded in slaves. So they always had to come down to trade with the Europeans, the Danes and the British who were trading in slaves. So they wanted a leeway just to meet the Danes or the British people directly, and we were not giving them that chance. So they always had to go to war with us. But finally, we defeated them.
Wow. But history has it that the Akans defeated the Gans. I mean, 3 different...
There is no war in history that the Gans have been defeated. No.
Okay.
That is a travesty of truth. There is no war.
Okay.
And all the facts are here. There is no war.
Ephod and breastplates among Ashanti Kingdom, Part 1. The source is Ashanti and the Gold Coast by John Beacam, published in 1841. It actually comes from the quote of Joseph Dupuy, and in his chapter on geography of Western Africa, meaning Joseph Dupuy, while he says that Yehudi is not a part of the empire of Ashanti, he admits that Ashanti influence carries great weight in the councils of the sovereign of Dagumba, and expressly mentions Inta and Gunja as a province, and again as a tributary of Ashanti. And after giving the names of Salga, the chief city, and several frontier towns on the Dahoman side, he explicitly maintains that although the people of all these places are left to the government of their own cabasirs or chiefs, and the jurisdiction of their own laws, yet are they compelled, whether Muslims or heathens, to serve in the wars of Ashanti. So the point made here is that the kingdom of Yehudi, or we know as Judah, was not a part of the sovereign city-states located in Ashanti. Okay, this fact supports the assertion that history offers concerning the toppling of the kingdom of Judah by means of slave raids conducted by the powerful Ashanti armies and along with other tribal enemies of Judah. Okay, now I know we may have a few detractors looking at this thinking that it doesn't say Yehudi just based off the spelling, but we're going to clarify the spelling in the next few slides. Ephod and breastplates among the Ashanti Kingdom, Part 2, and the source is History of the Gold Coast and Ashanti-based traditions and historical facts comprising of more than 3 centuries from 1500 to 1860. And that's by Carl Reindorf, co-authored by Johann Christaller. Okay, and this is the author's admonishment to the people of the gods. And in conclusion, I must beg you, my native friends, not to despise this work coming from one of your own brethren, but let it rather encourage you to assist me by your kind informations and cooperation so as to get our history complete. To interest you chiefly, I collected so many names of our forefathers who defended our country from the yoke of the Ashanti, trusting that every one of you will be pleased to find his grandfather's name in the lists. May our dear Lord bless this poor means I now offer to the public for the improvement of ourselves as well as our country. I am yours very truly, C.C. Reindorf. Okay. And here's his photo to the right. Ephod and breastplates among Ashanti Kingdom, Part 3. The source is Ocean Highways, the Geographical Review, Volume 1, published in 1874. At Pram Pram, my companion was delayed by anguish symptoms for 2 days. The traveler in Africa must expect this result from sudden exertion, unless he knows how to guard against it. Here we met Messrs. Irvin, Raker, and Reed, who assisted me in procuring a hammock and bearers for a trip inland. In descriptive geography, we have often to see what there is not as well as what there is, to find out, in fact, what is to not be found. According to the tradition of the coast, a colony of Jews expelled by Philip II had settled at Luduku, a place some 3 miles north of Pram Pram. Okay, so as we follow the asterisks, it leads us to a footnote. And the footnote reads, can this strange report have originated from the Ashanti Moors speaking to Bodik about Yehudi, the Jew, a country northeast of Timbuktu? Bosman tells us that the people of Adra or Fida, or that's Judah, traded to the Barbary coast and with the Moors, who might have introduced the legend. Okay, so the people of Judah we see are in direct contact with North Africa and the Barbary coast. And from a previous video, I did show that Negroes were a prominent class in northern Barbary. Okay, I'll bring that map back up for you guys. So continuing, we traveled along the hollow which contains the Great Lagoon, and presently reached a wave of ground showing heaps of rubbish, kinky stones, and traces of long switch walls, everything evidently native work. The situation was excellent, the only disadvantage being the presence of the akakintieri, or the scorpion, which affects the dry sandstone formation scattered over the rusty quartz. A little east of north, distant 15 to 16 miles, rose dim and blue the long peak of Ningo Grande, regular as Cameroon's or Fernando Po, and familiar landmark to every coaster. Barbot, who sketches it, calls the cone Mount Redondo. North stood the shaggy serrations of the Shai Hills, especially twin peaks like the Dome of the Camel, which Salah Ahmed to Caliph Ali's corpse. From north to northwest, the long azure curtains of the Aquafine highlands streaked the golden light, contrasted with the gleaming water at our feet and the smooth green plain dotted with blackbush and the calabash tree and speckled with thousands of cattle. According to the people, Laduku, the father of La, or fire, like Osudoku, father of Osu, was deserted after intestine feuds. Part of the population immigrated to La Dade or Labadi, and the rest to Pram Pram. So we see that a lot of the feudal wars between various tribes spawned the migration, okay, mainly of the people of Osu, but we'll get into more, okay.
I am Wor-lumor Boni Numo Noi Sikan KPenuku II, Osu Nadu and Clote Wor-lumor, the overlord of all of Osu. We have the King Kawi quarter, the Ashanti quarter, and then the Anaho quarter and the Alata quarter. Now we have the Ashanti people. Most of the people do say that the Ashanti people are Ashanti remnants. No, it is not so. But most of the people do say that the Ashanti people are Ashanti remnants. No, it is not so. But most of the people do say that the Ashanti people are Ashanti remnants. No, it is not so. When the bombardment, when in the days of the bombardment, most of us ran away. And when we were going, we left one of our brothers known as Tete. So he remained here. So when we mentioning his name, we used to say, Ashitete. Ashitete.
Meaning?
We left Tete behind. So he remained here. So we call this place Ashitete Blohun. Tete, the Tete we left, this is his quarter. Ashitete Blohun. You see, so most of the Ashantis too who came here because of the Brandenburgers fought at Tolomon, so they happened to live around us here and trading with the white men. So they happened to live around us here and trading with the white men. So they happened to live around us here and trading with the white men. So normally when people are going, when you are in Ashanti, but it's Ashitete Blohun. It is not Ashanti Blohun, no. The name has been corrupted to Ashanti Blohun. It's Ashitete Blohun.
All right, so Ephod and breastplates among Ashanti Kingdom, part 4. Okay, so from part 1 of Ephod among Ashanti, we had an issue with the spelling of Yehudi. I did manage to pull up in Spanish-Arabic dictionary entitled Vocabulista Aragio en Letra Castellana, something like that. And we can see, although it's printed in what is called textualis quadrata or black letter Gothic, it still means Yehudi, okay? So we see in the source Vocabulista Aragio in Letra Castellana by Pedro de Alcala. This dictionary is from 1505. And what do we have? Yehudi, okay? You can see all the different variations of how it was spelled. So when we get to the more recent sources, we need not trip about how that's spelled, because that actually does say Yehudi, okay? And so the second source we're using is the Gazetteer of the Old World, prepared by a staff of eminent geographers, published in 1887. It says Yehudi, again, Y-A-H-N-D-I, but we already know that's Yehudi. Yehudi, a town of Upper Guinea on the Gold Coast, capital of the kingdom of Dagomba, and 225 miles northeast of Kumasi, which is the capital of Ashanti, okay? So we can see here on the map by Charles Monin, published in 1837. I think we've used this before, maybe not. They're spelling it Y-A-H-U-D-I-E, okay? And where is it? Right where it should be, which is in the region proximity of Dagomba, okay? And last source we're using is The Mission from the Cape Coast Castle to Ashanti by Thomas Bowdick, okay? Again, from the previous slide, this kingdom over here, Yehudi, as having been peopled by Jews expelled from Philip II, okay, of Spain. Now, in the work, it says Yehudi is described to be beyond comparison larger than Kumasi, the houses much better built and ornamented. The Ashantis who had visited it told Mr. Bowdick they had frequently lost themselves in the streets. The king has been converted by the Moors, who have settled themselves there in great numbers. Okay, so Yehudi was so magnificent and large and excellent. Okay, Ashantis were actually getting lost in the streets. Okay, the significance in that is that these people of Yehudi were Jews of old. Unfortunately, they had to be, you know, converted to Islam, and many of them were sold into slavery. But they were Jews, and that is on the account of Bowdick and others. Okay, very important. Ephod and breastplates among the Ashanti Kingdom, Part 5, same source by Karl Reindorf. Okay. The elder on the left is King Takitawiya I of Akara, and he's celebrated for many of his vigilant works that he did among the people of Goth, and namely the resisting the British rule in the stealing of the golden stool. Okay, and I'll provide a link down below so you can read up on that. But getting into the account of Karl Reindorf, we see the following. The people for some time had nobody at their head in worshiping the fetishes, principally Sakumo. The fetish prophets therefore instigated the people to appeal to Momo to nominate someone of the family to act as their mouthpiece to the fetishes, Okaitsha still retaining them in his custody, and she did so. The tradition says that a sister of Momo was married to a nephew of Okaitsha, and they had a son named after the grandfather Tiko. The father of this son was dead. Momo consulted Okaitsha, and obtaining his permission, gave him to the fetish men. He was wrapped in an ephod and taken around the town.
What did you say, nigga?
I said he was wrapped in an ephod and taken around town. This originated the usage still prevailing that before a king is instated, the chief of the Bese must be consulted and his consent formally obtained, and the king must, on the death of any fetish priest, officiate in all the fetish houses, especially in those of the three principal fetishes, Nai, Sakumo, and Kole. Jealousy offering in Negro land? Question mark. Book source is from Voyages and Descriptions by James Napton, published in 1699. I have a photo here by an engraver, Bernard Picard, and I don't know if you guys can read the bottom, but I'll read it for you. It says, the method of their wives purging themselves from the accusation of adultery. So let's get into the actual reference. Of this arrack, every man has a small draught given him to drink after he has publicly declared his sincerity and readiness to serve his prince. It is seemed a solemn tie by which any man can engage himself. This way of giving solemn potions to drink is used also in other countries on different occasions, as particularly on the Gold Coast of Guinea, where when men or women are taxed for a crime, be it of what nature it will, but especially adultery, and the matter cannot be proved by evidence, the fedetesero or priest decides the difference by giving a potion of bitter water to the person accused, which if they refuse to take, they are supposed to be guilty without further proof. But if they drink it off, the event is said to be that if the persons be guilty, this water immediately swells their bodies till they burst. But if innocent, they are not hurt thereby. What tricks the fedeceros may play in compounding this water, I know not. But this kind of trial is frequent among them, and seems to be remainder of the old Jewish trial by the waters of jealousy, spoken of in the 5th chapter of Numbers. I am not sufficiently informed whether the event of the trial be such as it was among the Jews, but it seems they have a strong persuasion of it, and the guilty person does ordinarily so dread the being brought to this trial, that for the most part he or she choose rather to suffer the punishment of the country, which is to be sold to Europeans as slaves. Okay, so we'll stop there, and obviously we don't agree with that portion being as volunteering ourselves to be sold into slavery just to avoid, you know, a trial. So as we can see the illustration on the left, I mean, they tried to draw a European aspect, but these are not Europeans. They're obviously Negroes, so don't get caught up on the imagery per se. This type of trial is actually rampant among many of the West African tribes along Guinea. So, you know, using deductive reasoning, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, more than likely it's a duck. Very important. Okay, so this concludes part 3 of the series. We want to thank and bless you all for tuning in. If you found this presentation educational, please don't forget to hit the like button and the notification bell. Also subscribe to the channel and leave a comment down below. And let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep the commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Shalom.
The people with dark skin getting off. Black skin. The people with dark skin getting off. Black skin.
The conditions are getting critical.